Okay, great, thank you. I'm going to call the meeting to order at 6:03 with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, there is under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Secretary,
Sure, the roll
can you
call.
call the roll, please?
Sure. Mr. Brooks? Mr. Carter?
Here.
Ms. Martin present? Mrs. Peasky?
Here.
Mrs. Washington?
Here.
Mrs. Williams? And
Here.
Mr. Robleski.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you. What is the mission of Baldwin Community Schools?
Preparing students for the promise of tomorrow.
Promise of tomorrow. Awesome, thank you. The purpose of, I can't read that, it's too small. The purpose of the open board meeting. This meeting is a meeting of the Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business and is not to be considered a public community meeting. There is time for public participation during the meeting as indicated in the agenda, and we do have 2 communication items tonight. So we'll move on to consent agenda items. Look like there's an addition under discussion for number 4. One addition item under number 4 and add an action item, truant policy related to Michigan Myosha rule. That'll be an action number 5. Truant policy, Myosha. Okay, so the consent agenda items is approval of the agenda with the addition under discussion and an action item for the truant policy related to the Myosha rule. 5, the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of October 20th, approval of the bills to be paid, starting with the general fund check account checks starting at 74327 to 74408, food service account check starting 5037, Baldwin Promise Authority check 1310 to 1316, and the student activity check account check number 12251. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda items?
I make a motion we approve the consent agenda items. Mary Ann Peasky.
Is there a second support?
Support.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. The motion by Mrs. Peasky, seconded by Mr. Carter to approve the consent agenda items. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. Presentations.
Madam President, could we have the auditors go first?
Yes, we can.
Are you ready for me?
Yep, go right ahead. Is it Mr. Winooski?
All right, thank you very much. We audited the financial statements of Baldwin Community Schools as of and for the year ended June 30, 2020. Management is responsible for the preparation and fair presentation of these financial statements. Our responsibility is to express opinion on them based on our audit, which we conducted in accordance with auditing standards generally accepted in the United States. And in our opinion, the financial statements present fairly the financial position of Baldwin Community Schools as of June 30, 2020. The best opinion we can give you, so that's what you want to see there. I'm just going to quickly cover page 22. I can put it up on the screen if you'd like me to. I'll leave that up to you.
I believe we have a copy.
Okay, if everybody has a copy, I'm looking at page 22 of the financial statement then. It's the general fund statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance, budget to actual. And the general fund's your main operating fund. So at June 3rd, for the year ended June 30, you had total revenues of $8,459,000, total expenditures of $7,683,000, for excess of revenues over expenditures of $775,806, and an ending fund balance of $3,371,651. The general fund's fund balance represents 43.89% of expenditures, or about 5.26 months. We like to see a minimum of 15 to 20% of expenditures, so the district's general fund is in great financial condition. I just like to take a quick look at how these amounts compared to the final budget for the district. If you look at that same page, total revenues were under budget by $178,000 or 2.1%. Considering the state was still playing with the numbers after June 30 when you had to have the budget finalized, that is very good budgeting on the revenue side. The expenditure side, the expenditures were under budget by $207,996. Again, only 2.7% variance. Again, a great job with budgeting. The state doesn't even start worrying about you until you're 5% or more off. So it's a great job budgeting, especially this year with so many uncertainties. I'd like to thank the board for once again allowing us to perform your annual audit, and thank David and his whole staff for helping us complete this audit. We had to do it mostly virtual this year, so I think it went pretty smooth, all things considered. And if anybody has any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Are there any questions for Mr. Winooski? Well, we want to thank you for your presentation tonight and working with our financial staff to get that done virtually. I'm pretty sure it was a little challenging.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So are we going to go with the elementary engagement team?
Yeah.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. This is Mr. Mangum from the elementary school, elementary principal. I've also invited Mr. Tim Fournier, who is our student support specialist tonight, to join us in this conversation, and also Mrs. Jody Drilling, who is our interventionist. And they are both members of the outreach and engagement team. I'm going to present, if that's okay, Mr. Heitmeyer. Do I have the ability to do that?
I don't think there's any way for me to stop you, so you should be able to.
Okay.
Not like Zoom. At least I don't think it is.
Well, it's trying.
Yes.
All right. Did everyone see that? All right. So I was asked to present a little bit about our outreach and engagement team, or engagement and outreach team process tonight. And so just to kind of talk through this, this team was put together in September, at the very beginning of September, to ensure that each of our students' needs were being met from the standpoint of being able to engage in the remote learning process. And when I mean each student, I mean each student. We're going to be talking a lot about numbers, but I think what you need to understand is that we're actually looking at individual students. When we have these meetings, we have student names up on the board, and we're going through each of our students to see how they are performing, how they are participating in that week in real time, so that we can adjust and meet their needs. So the purpose of this team was really, like I said, to make sure that we're enabling our students to engage in that remote learning process. We have 3 areas that we focus in on. The first being the progress monitor student remote learning participation levels. And in doing so, we're looking at 3 areas. We're looking at Google Meet participation, those students that are online with their teachers in real time. Assignment completion, which is, are they meeting in real time with their teachers, or maybe not meeting in real time with their teachers, right? But they're still getting those assignments turned in. And then we also look at two-way contact information for those students that aren't able, that might have some connectability issues in their ability to connect with their teachers. So those are 3 data points that we look at on a weekly basis. The other areas that this team really dives into is to identify barriers to student engagement and then work with families to resolve them. So that's that outreach piece, right? When we see that there's an issue, we're contacting students and families to see how we can adjust our practices to help them engage in the process. And then finally, we also want to be able to support the academic and non-academic needs of those remote students. So we'll talk a little bit about 1 and 2 as being the first layer of this work, really getting students engaged. But since mid-October, we've really started to dive into that purpose 3, which is meeting those academic needs, as well as some of those non-academic needs. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. Just to let you know, the team is made up of several different members of the Baldwin Community Schools staff, including we have a teacher, our interventionist, Ms. Drilling, our instructional coach, our student support specialist, Mr. Fournier, who's here tonight. Our building secretariat joins us each week as well, because she gets a lot of information from parents calling in or stopping into the building. So that's a great source of information as well. And then I myself sit on this team. So each week we pull all of this data together and we complete a weekly data review every Friday morning at 8 a.m. And in that data meeting, what we look at is the student participation from that week. And we categorize our students into one of 3 categories. Blue, which is that they met the state minimum requirement of at least 2 participations. However, that's the state requirement. Our expectation is that they engage much more than that, and most of our students do. And when I talk about participate, I'm talking about actions per week, right? So they've either met in a Google face-to-face meeting with their teacher multiple times throughout the week, which is what we encourage, because that's where they're going to have that real meaningful interaction with their teacher, and they're completing assignments, right? And or completing assignments. We also have what's a yellow category, which is 1 participating action per week, and a red category, which is 0 participating actions per week. Those students that fall into the yellow and red categories then become our priority students for the next week, and we start making phone calls to kind of see what happened and why they weren't able to participate that week. And that's where Mr. Fournier will step in. I myself will make phone calls. Ms. Drilling, we kind of triage and set up a system of making sure that we're contacting all of these students and engaging and trying to problem solve with them to make sure that they're able to engage in that process. Ms. Drilling or Mr. Fournier, is there anything you'd like to add to those 2 pieces? I'm seeing shaking head. Okay. All right. And we also identify we are also looking at how the students are interacting with us in the learning process. And so we have a number of categories there that we also look at each week. And so how many students are meeting online synchronously? So they're attending that face-to-face meeting online with that teacher in real time and are on that Google Classroom. That's really what we're trying to get all students to be able to do, because that's what we feel as that most meaningful interaction. We also have students that are interacting with us asynchronously, not in real time, but they might be using a packet and a thumb drive, right? So they're getting those instructional videos and their assignments that way. We've really made a conscious effort to move as many of those students that are in that asynchronous world into that online synchronous. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. The MyFi initiative is a big component of that, making sure that we're getting students access to the internet. And then we have students that kind of fluctuate between the two, where they might be asynchronous one week and synchronous the next week, or in and out through the process, for a number of different reasons. They may lose Wi-Fi connectability. They may have issues with internet. They may be in different households on different weeks, but they kind of move back and forth in there. And so we're continually watching that. And then we have a much smaller group of students that have limited or no interaction. And those are really our priority students. And that number has fluctuated anywhere from about 16 to 9, depending on any given week, right? And so those are those students that become our main priority, because if they fall off, we want to make sure that we're contacting them even that Friday right after our meeting, so that we're saying, hey, what's going on? We didn't see you this week. So in reviewing this data, what this has allowed us to do is to be very, very flexible to the needs of our students. It's allowed us to identify a number of barriers. Connectability, for one, is an extremely important one. And we've met a number of accomplishments by doing this. We've got a lot more work to do, but we have seen rapid growth, rapid increases in the areas that we want to see those things happening. For example, we've seen almost a 59% increase in students moving from synchronous or moving to synchronous or online learning. And that's something that we want to see, because that's that meaningful face-to-face interaction online learning, right? A lot of that has to do with teaching our parents the importance of them being in that online environment, and also getting them the access that they need. Mr. Fournier, you can speak to this, and I'm sure you have new numbers, but as of 11/9, we were able to distribute 45 MiFi devices to just elementary families alone. And so that increased accessibility for 84 of our students, which was a tremendous boost to getting students into those classrooms. Additionally, when we bring those parents in, or we reach out to those parents to get them their MiFi device, part of the requirement is that they sit down with Mr. Fournier and we teach them not only how to use the Wi-Fi device, but because they haven't been online in those Google Classrooms or those Google Meets, he sits down and teaches them how to use all of those pieces, gets them logged into their students' Google Classroom, and just kind of shows them how to turn and work and do all of those things. And we found that to be very, very successful in moving students into that area where we want to see them, which is that synchronous online learning.
Just to add to that point, Mr. Mangum, there are 4 remaining devices of the initial 100 devices. As of tonight, there's 4 remaining.
Yep. So again, these numbers were from the 9th of November, and we've continued to increase those numbers and distribute those MiFi devices every day. Every day, Tim's meeting with folks. So that has been a tremendous help. The other thing is that we've been able to see an increase in student participation numbers. When we started tracking this data, we were in the low 70s, high 60s. And as we've continued to do this work, we have increased, and the numbers as of 11/6 and 11/13 are participation numbers of 85% and 83%. So we've made really good gains. Just moving from 77% a few weeks ago to that 85% number, that's 20 more students that are engaging consistently online, just to kind of give you an idea of what that means. And our goal is to get to 100% of our kids. And so we're going to continue to work towards that and do so each week.
Mr. Mangum, so when we talk about traditional education, we're talking about butts and seats. So
Yeah.
when you're talking about this, you're actually talking about faces on the screen.
Yes, sir.
Every day with their teachers, right?
Yes, sir. Faces on the screen and participating and turning in work. That's what we're looking for here. And as I mentioned before, we're looking at, while the state requirement is 2 of those interactions per week, most of our kids, when you look at them, they're there 5, 6, 7 times per week. So, I mean, that's really what we're shooting for, to get them in front of those teachers as much as possible. So as I mentioned before, that was really that outreach and connection piece. Where we've shifted our focus now with this team is to start looking into meeting those academic and non-academic needs. And so beginning at the end of October, we began the process of looking at those students and identifying students that would need additional academic supports. And so we began to implement a process of identifying students and then utilizing our 2 interventionists to give those students additional time with instruction. And so Mrs. Drilling has kind of taken the lead on that. And to date, we've identified 54 students, 2nd grade through 5th grade, that have begun to receive those supports. And we started those supports right at the end of October, and they've been meeting with our interventionists since that time. So again, now we're going deeper, right? Each time we do this, we kind of look at what do we need to layer on next. So there are a number of barriers that we've been able to identify as we've gone through this process. And that's the importance of looking at this data at such a deep level and such a frequent level, because it allows us to adjust in real time. The MiFi devices, knowing that we had to increase that connectability was an example of that. The fact that we had the majority of our students, 80% of our students now attending classes regularly, meant that we could make that adjustment and allow for interventionists to start meeting with them to give them additional supports. Now we're looking at what are those additional barriers or those other barriers that we didn't foresee, and how do we meet those needs? And so some of those barriers continue to outreach for a small number of students who are not connecting with teachers or our supports. Like I said, we have about roughly anywhere on any given week or every given couple of weeks, 9 to 16 students that kind of fall off that list. And so we're continuing to find out ways to get them to engage. I know Mr. Fournier was able to find a student that we've been trying to get in contact with since the beginning of the year, like 2 weeks ago, and was able to find out that student had moved, was living with a new care provider, and he was able to meet with that person, get the student the resources they need, and that student is now connecting with the class, and we're continuing to do that. We're after every kid right now. We're trying to get every kid to be engaged. Some of the other barriers that we've kind of come to discover revolve around the MiFi devices. There are a number of cellular deserts within our region, specifically near Irons and Bitely, right? These are areas where the cellular service is not great, and those MiFi devices struggle a bit. So we've got to explore different ways to make sure that those students can still engage. Another thing we have discovered is that when a home has a metal roof, it can be a bit of a barrier for those MiFi devices. And so that's another thing that we're discussing with folks is how do they get that device in an appropriate place so that it can get the best reception that it can. And then finally, we are recognizing that while those devices can have up to, I believe, I think 12 people on them. I mean, Mr. Fournier, you might know that better. What we found is the bandwidth, because we're doing so much video and so much interaction like we're doing right now in a Google Meet, right? That bandwidth needs to be greater. And so what we found is families with 4 or 5 students in the household may need more than one device. And that's a conversation we're having tomorrow to make sure that they have the bandwidth that they need to do the work that we need them to do and to be able to participate in the way that we need them to participate. So next steps for this team is to continue with the outreach. We'll never stop that outreach piece and making sure that all of our kids are connecting. But the other thing that we're looking at now is to develop support plans for those families that are experiencing those MiFi connection issues. And we'll be meeting this Friday to kind of talk through those and problem solve some of those issues. Again, getting an example would be getting a second device for those families that have 4 or 5 students in the household and they just need additional bandwidth. The other piece that we're looking at is we're looking to expand our additional academic supports to include kindergarten and 1st grade. When we did the initial academic supports, we were really looking at 2nd through 5th grade because that was where the greatest number of students were at that needed those pieces, but also that was the area where teachers had also identified that the teachers in first and kindergarten had identified that they were doing a pretty good job with those pieces. Now we've reached out and said, okay, we're ready. We have more capacity. We can take more on. Who are those students that you need us to work with? And so that's that next step as well. At this time, I'll kind of open it up again to Mr. Fournier or Mrs. Drilling, and if there's anything else that you would like to add.
I would just like to mention that the numbers that we have been putting up on that board, even though they have fluctuated very, very high, the initial like, oh my goodness, was there. However, the good news, if it's good news, that the kids who weren't connecting aren't always the same. They're not the 9 to 16 kids. That 9 to 16 kids are not the same kids. And that's really good, because we're reaching some of those kids. We're solving some of those problems, and new problems shift up, and new problems, will always shift up. But the good news is that those kids are not the same kids, and the opportunities that are there, and the strength that I think that our teachers have is that they're keeping those kids engaged.
Absolutely.
Our numbers have not, for us to go from the 60s to the 70s to now that they're 70s and 80s, those same kids are keeping engaged. And that's a huge, huge hurdle. I think that our teachers have gotten to the top of that hill, and they're not falling back down. They're up there, they're staying up there and getting ready to go over to that other side. And I think that that's acknowledgeable.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We look at this as being the most important work that we can do, because we want to make sure that our kids are still engaging in that learning process, regardless of if we're in person or remote. And so making sure that they're there, constant communication with our teachers about this. They feed all of this data to us through a number of different documents so that we can do our work. And really the whole purpose of this team was to say to our teachers, you concentrate on the kids that are in front of you. We'll concentrate on getting more kids in front of you, right? And getting all the kids in front of you. That takes that worry off from their plate and really puts it on ours to make sure that they can just focus on teaching and learning. Are there any questions? That was a lot of information in a short amount of time, but we meet every Friday with this team. We do it virtually or live. I know Mr. Washington was able to participate a week ago. We would invite any of the board members to sit in on this and show you what this process looks like.
Great job.
Thank you for that presentation, the whole engagement team. And I did have an opportunity to witness this in action. And I would encourage any board member who has concerns about whether or not students are able to connect or students are learning, to really take the time and reach out to Mr. Magnum and to the engagement team to really make sure, you understand, like, it's a lot of work that's going on. This team is doing a lot of great work to keep our kids engaged. And so we appreciate the whole team, and thank you for that presentation. Are there any questions or comments?
Well, it sounds like a lot of hard work is being done. Can you hear me out here?
Yes, we can, Mr. Brooks.
Okay. All right. And we appreciate that. How are our kids doing overall?
I'm sorry, could you?
Yeah, progress reports or
Yeah.
as far as grades overall, how are our kids doing?
Yeah, we're working on that. We've made some adjustments. And I'll talk about that in my principal presentation. Those students that are engaging are doing well. Those students that haven't been engaging do struggle, right? And so that's why we're trying to get them in front of the teachers. Where we find that kids struggle is in that asynchronous mode, right? Because they don't have that the video is not like direct instruction, right? And so that's why we need them in front of those teachers, working with those teachers. And so when we see kids in front of the teachers, working with those teachers, they're doing well. When they struggle is when they don't have that constant connection with folks. And that's why we're really trying to be able to go to scale with that. That being said, some things that we've implemented that I'll talk about a little bit later is we are moving to a bi-weekly progress report to keep parents informed. And that's part of that process to kind of make sure that, hey, you got to keep on your kids. They got to continue to be engaged and in front of those teachers and participating in those online sessions.
That's part of where my job is I've been taking those kids that are struggling and meeting with them 2 to 3 times a week also. And then that way I am able to go right into their Google Classroom and see those assignments that they're missing, or ask them, are you having problems fulfilling this? And that's part of my job also is to nip those kids and have just another adult that they can, get some extra help from.
Any other questions? Okay. So do we have our next presentation available?
Yeah, we have Mr. Tom Stevenson here. He is from, I believe, Connected Michigan and Connected USA. He can probably correct what his official company titles are, but he is the person who we are working with to try to create internet on a very large scale for Lake County. So, Mr. Stevenson, I'm going to turn it over to you for a few minutes.
Oh, you're muted, sir.
There you go. Yes, I'm with Connect Michigan. It's part of a nonprofit called Connected Nation. Excuse me, I've been presenting all day. Our main task is to work with the state and the communities to improve broadband access, adoption, and use throughout the state of Michigan. I will say that I'm recently working under a project with the Michigan Economic Development Corporation. They've asked us to work with several communities, starting based on their level of unserved or underserved residents in those communities. Actually, right now we're working with about 18 of them, and Lake County happens to be one of those communities. I've been working with Lake County actually in the Lake County team since 2014, I believe. Several members of your community, Larry Lewis is one, Jody Nichols, John Trimberger up there in the Luther area. Been working with those folks for a long time now on the broadband issues, and we've had some success in bringing broadband to Lake County. Several years ago, you might consider Lake County a broadband desert. Where we had less than 3% of the population actually had access to good internet, high-speed internet, which we rate at 25 megs down and 3 megs up is the minimum, is the new standard. Recently, with the fiber optics lines and the build-out by Casair, working with the county and community leaders, they've been able to run a fiber optics line across through coming from Chase all the way into Baldwin, and then now they're heading south. And I'd like to thank the school for anchoring that build, actually. That's what got them to move into Lake County first under a new federal program called under the FCC's new program. Casair is receiving several $1 million to build out service on the east side of Lake County right now. And that fiber optics line was one of the main lines. It's running in town up to the water tower. And I believe it's heading down south to currently down south. The line's heading down south on US on M37 there. So with that said, we're actually seeing folks in running through the Idlewild area actually getting gigabit service. You went from almost less than 1% to about 15% of the population now has access to that fiber optics line, and we're totally trying to increase that as quick as we can. With COVID, the advent of COVID, the state has set up what's called the Connecting Michigan Task Force. This is one of the first time when a lot of the different agencies within the state of Michigan, the Board of Education, HHS, Michigan Public Service Commission, MEDC, Michigan Management Technology and Budget, the libraries, civil rights, MDOT, a lot of them all sitting down and looking to solve the broadband issue here in the state of Michigan, working together. The idea is to work as a task force, look at the critical needs in the state, and then focus the resources and collaborate together instead of working separately, collaborate together and combine those resources, start working on those issues. The task force has just recently been meeting, and hopefully with the advent of new legislation and legislators in the spring, or actually this winter, we'll start to hopefully see some legislation being proposed and some programs being proposed. As far as Lake County, the broadband meeting, we've launched a broadband survey, and I'll be sending out flyers to the schools there to hopefully pass out or send the links out to the parents. And that's one of the first things we're going to do is an assessment, doing a broadband survey. We need about 550 responses minimum from the county. And we're also working with the local businesses, getting surveys from businesses, the schools, the libraries, governmental units, public safety. So we'll be collecting all that data, then presenting that data to the community and start working on some more recommended actions. I will say there has been a couple of new announcements coming up as far as the broadband. Let's back up for a minute. With the COVID, demand on the internet right now is at about has increased about 30%. So what that means is there's a shortage of materials, shortage of labor, actually. So, for example, if you know somebody is looking for a really good job, maybe they should look towards the communication industry right now because they're paying really good money in training people. There's a huge shortage. Installations have gone from usually about a week to 2 weeks to about 6 to 8 weeks. In any business, if you're a business person, you do not want to tell your customer, I can't be there for 8 weeks. That's the worst thing that can happen. But right now, we just happen to have we had a labor shortage. The fiber optic cables that are in the ground, right now, those are currently on a back order. The good stuff that the providers like to use that are easily to hook up to the homes and used as a long haul up to the schools and residents and businesses right now, that's on back order about 6 months. And with the federal government launching what's called the Rural Digital Opportunity Fund, that's going to be a subsidy program that was similar to the old Connect America program, but this one is going to be bringing broadband a minimum of 25 megs down and 3 megs up. But I will say, looking at the competition recently, if a provider isn't in the bidding process of bringing at least 100 megs down and 10 megs up, you might as well stay home. You're wasting your time even bidding. So currently right now, the auction's underway for the providers, and the FCC is offering a subsidy of about $1.6 million for Lake County. And they've identified over 6,000 locations that need broadband service, at least a minimum of 25 by 3. We should know the results of that auction here shortly. When I say shortly, by around the first of the year, several providers are actually looking at doing this. In addition, as far as broadband expansion, another thing that's come to everybody's attention is Great Lakes Energy. The electric co-ops are now in the process. Great Lakes Energy is in the process of building out to all its customers fiber optics. This is a very aggressive program. It's going to take them probably another 6 or 7 years to do this. It's several hundred millions of dollars, but the federal government is working with a lot of electric co-ops, launching a similar program that was done back in the 30s. Remember, if your history lessons, they talked about the rural electrification program where they created a lot of these electric co-ops to bring electricity to the rural areas. Well, they're launching a similar program. So a lot of the electric co-ops are currently doing a build out. Now, Great Lakes Energy has been sending out flyers to everybody, announcing this and breaking up they broke it up into what we call zones throughout the western side of Michigan. And currently, I live up here in Elk Rapids. They're finishing up the area from the Mackinac Bridge down to the north end of Elk Rapids and on over to almost over to I-75. And the next move is coming down south. They just announced build out down in the White Cloud area, down in the Shelby area, and down in Wayland, which is east of Hastings down in Berry County. one of the meetings we had here recently, somebody asked why they go in there first and said, well, we've been sending this flyer out to everybody asking them to sign up. And those communities in those areas, they went around and they signed up. It's that simple. And so they're going after the board. Once they get a certain number of people saying they want to sign up for the fiber optic service, then they will build out to those folks. True Stream is the name of the company. I will say the fiber optics, everybody's been raving about it. It's 100 megs down, 100 megs up for $55, and you can go to gig service for just under $100. And what they're doing is they're not only bringing broadband, but they're also recreating and actually modernizing the electrical grid at the same time, putting smart meters on the homes, changing over from that electrical grid model that was based in the 1920s, 1930s. They're finally going to modernize that at the same time. So that's how they can justify this build out. So we're working with your community, trying to get the word out, trying to get them to sign up. And like I said, once the winners of the Rural Digital Opportunity Fund are announced in January, those winners, those providers, we hopefully will be coming to be working with the community here in Lake County and the schools. So in short, that's pretty much, I will say, because of the backup, CASAIR has a program running in the community, but unfortunately the equipment which was supposed to be shipped out in February didn't show out because of back order until late August. So hopefully they'll be upgrading the water tower, the Chase Tower, and I believe there's a tower up by Wolf Lake right now. They'll be hitting those areas also. So there's a lot of things, nice things going on. And I was pleasantly surprised also when I visited Lake County with Larry and his team. We went down into Idlewild and the Old Chicago Club, and there's a new facility moving up out of Detroit. And so the name, I'm sorry, the name is the Fab Lab. And it's a modern CNC training facility with CAD/CAM equipment, computer-aided design, computer-aided machinery. And it's like a mini incubator manufacturing facility all built in one. These are modeled all over the world. And because fiber optics came to Idlewild, they're locating it there right in Idlewild, which will be another great opportunity. So we know that bringing good high-speed internet actually raises not only creates a lot of opportunities, but it also, according to our study, brings approximate value of about $1,900 to every family that's hooked up to good high-speed internet. The last thing I'll say is because of the COVID, we are seeing an expansion of telemedicine, visits in the home on the smartphone, and also monitoring, in-home monitoring devices. And not only are the service providers coming to Lake County discussing this, working with the community, so are the healthcare. So I've had both family healthcare and right there in Lake County, Baldwin, but also we've had Spectrum come up out of the south with their telehealth services, and also Munson out of the north. So we're bringing in a lot of folks, a lot of attention. And Bruce, I'm really proud of what you're doing there. I like what I hear. And if you could share that presentation with me, I'd love to look at that and take that down to the state level and see what they're doing. Show them what you're doing up here. It's the lack of broadband to these students throughout. I've been telling people sitting on this on a call all summer long, talking to these superintendents, you can't spend a more depressing hour than when you're talking to these school superintendents and having to deal with what they're having to deal with. And so the state that's our number one focus right now, is get that broadband out there in the rural areas and help those students, but also those residents for the healthcare needs. So how's that, Rick?
Sounds good. I'm wondering if anybody has any questions for you. They very well may.
Sure.
Well, it sounds like you're very busy, so we appreciate you coming tonight and giving us an update on the broadband situation in Lake County. And some of those names that you mentioned earlier have been some long-term players in the community that's been working really hard to bring some internet and broadband. So it's good to see that those people are still in it for the fight, and that Baldwin Community Schools can join in as well to make sure our students and our families have some internet access. So thank you.
Right, I'm going to send a flyer out. I'm getting them printed up. I'll get them down there. Hopefully, at some point, you'll be able to send it out to the folks, the parents, and have them sign up and to increase the counts for the internet. Basically, what we're doing is trying to create a stronger business case for Lake County, and we've been able to do that in certain areas. And the more people can sign up, and we put those the needs on a little dot on a map and show those clusters of need. And that's what motivates creating that marketing case. And so if the schools, you've done a great service already, helping anchor that fiber optics build from Chase all the way into Baldwin. And I'd like to thank you for that. That's the kind of the public-private partnerships we like to see that make things happen. So very good. I appreciate what you've done. Thank you.
Thank you. We
Thank
appreciate you signing
Hey,
in with
Tom,
us.
I have a question.
Sure.
There's a tower on Sippy Flats Hill up there. Is there a reason why Lily isn't able to utilize that phone source up there or that power source?
Who?
Doesn't Verizon have a tower on that hill there?
Yeah, Verizon's I believe Verizon has a tower there. I'm not familiar with all the towers. Isn't there like 4 towers there now, 5 towers in that area?
I do believe so.
Yes. So yeah, Verizon's up there. And a lot of cases, what's happening here is the new 5G. I will say that there's a lot of new contracts out there, and a lot of these towers need to be upgraded in terms of fiber optics. The new 5G build out, which is coming to actually rural areas, I'm working with a lot of communities. It requires the new updated fiber optics. So getting those lines ran through and getting cooperation from the road commission and the county, which has been really good so far. We even get a commission. So we got to get those, the fiber optics ran. The 5G people are talking about, you're going to be looking at, that's a private investment right now that started a couple of years ago. In the big 4, which is AT&T, Verizon, Sprint, and T-Mobile, which have combined together, that's a $275 billion investment on their part. And it's going to take several years. And part of the reason that fiber optics are being backordered right now is because of that 5G build out. They're moving as fast as they can as far as the labor, but the state of Michigan, that is something the schools can look at too, is actually looking at some working together providers on some internship programs and pushing those students in that direction, because those are good paying jobs. And I tell you right now, it's they're pretty much recession proof. A lot of those jobs are, and they're well paying. And so like right now, that's probably the biggest holdup I have in rural Michigan right now, is actually getting it installed, is the lack of installers. So just a word of advice there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you again for being here tonight and sharing that information with us.
Thank you. And hopefully we'll be doing a catch-up meeting here shortly in Lake County, and Rick will get the invite. Maybe you can share that with the board members so they can attend that meeting and see where we're at with the providers and where the survey's at. So I'll be sure to share that with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. So now we have the reconfirmation of the COVID-19 plans.
All right, let me go back to sharing my screen. All right, so this is reconfirmation number 2, and give you a little bit of background before we get to the actual reconfirmation. I'm sure that Sunday night most of you were tuned in and learned about the Pause to Save Lives. That information was shared quite a bit. It's available on our website, but just a quick update. Over the weekend, there were Sunday and Monday, 12,763 new cases. And then today there were 7,458 new cases in the state of Michigan. And just a little over a month ago, we sat at 151,000. Right now, we're at 272,000. So it is continuing to spread rapidly. As of today, there have been 134 confirmed cases in Lake County of COVID-19. So what is the purpose of the reconfirmation hearing that we need to do every month? We need to reconfirm how instruction is going to be delivered during the school year. We need to take public comments from parents or guardians on our extended learning plan, and we need to review weekly two-way interaction rates. So a reconfirmation instructional delivery method, Baldwin Community Schools began the year on August 24th in remote, and plans to continue that through January 15th at this point. All levels are currently remote. We do have some areas, specifically special education and some other special situations where kids did get in-person instruction on a limited basis. For the next 4 weeks, though, we're going to change that. I have to let you know that we had one person from outside the district work with us last week, and it has put 3 teachers and 7 students in quarantine. So though we've been remote throughout the year, we have had almost 25% of our staff have to quarantine at some point. So it's interesting that despite taking a lot of precautions, we've still had people and students have to quarantine. We do have students who are still going to the RI program through the ESD at the elementary level, and right now we are remote only for students in our on-site special education programs. Now, these are October's reports on two-way communications during a week. So this is different from what you're going to hear about from the principals and what you already heard about from the elementary principal. These are what is considered the state minimum, 2 communications of some type with the students during the week. So as you can see, the week of October 5th, the numbers look pretty good. The second week, that was our week back after testing. You can see the numbers were a little bit lower. Then they started to go back up. But again, these are two-way communications. These are not those faces on screens that we were talking about. But overall, as far as getting communication with students, we are doing fairly well in that area. So I have to give you this report each month so you're updated. We will take any questions about those, but overall, that is the information that I want to share right now, and that's what we're required to do in the monthly reconfirmation hearing. And then I will take the document and put it on the website under our COVID area in the transparency area. Do you have any questions about any of that information?
Everyone's good on that information that was presented? Okay, we will move on to number 5, which is the policy regarding the myosha rule.
We'll do that actually under discussion item number 5. Number 4.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Okay, put it in the wrong place. Okay, principals reports. Mr. Mangum, you want to provide your elementary report?
So I shared a lot of what I what I had on the report from the outreach and engagement team, but I'll talk a little bit into the building news piece. In my report, you'll see that there's building news, and then there'll be a second paragraph on our outreach and engagement. And I'll continue to do that while we're in remote, to kind of give you some of that data information from that team as well. But in the building news area, the teachers are really working hard to continue to improve their online instruction, right? We're going to be here for a little while at least, and we want to make sure that we're doing the best that we can do. So we've been spending some time in BCS talking about how do we increase the clarity for both our students and our parents, because they're on those classrooms as well, on those Google Classrooms. How do we make it easier for students to navigate? How do we make it clear for them to understand how to submit those assignments, how to pull down that information, how to do all of that reviewing? And so we've been taking some time during our BCS time in the morning to work through those pieces. Additionally, during that time, we've been diving into our new ELA curriculum, that's K through 5, which is EL education. And we're also looking at that through the lens of not only face-to-face instruction, but also in that online instruction. And we've been working with our EL trainers on those pieces, so that staff is ready not only when we come back with students, but also in the right now while we're teaching online. On October 29th and 30th, we hosted virtual parent-teacher conferences, and we had approximately 75% of families participate over those 2 days. So pretty good numbers considering that it was virtual and it was new. And then in the first and second week of November, teachers began the process of mailing out replenishment materials for students. Kids were starting to run low on the paper and the pencil and those types of things. And so we did a large mailing. Each grade level put together a mailing to send out to all of their kids, and those got out recently. Additionally, as I mentioned earlier, we want to make sure that parents are informed. And so what we've started to do is a every other week progress report that goes home to kind of just give folks a little bit of a window into how students are doing in their classes. Are they turning in their assignments? Are they participating in those sessions? And then also, if they're asynchronous, how are they doing from that standpoint? So we will do our second mailing. It will be sent to me on Monday morning. We will pack those up, and that second progress report will go out on Tuesday morning. And I think that's everything I have right now. It's been a busy month.
Sounds like it. Any questions for Mr. Mangum?
Yes, I do. I just want to follow up on my question, Bruce. How are you and Mr. Cornwell and the superintendent obviously are going to touch bases with us as far as the bottom line, the progress of our students. I personally would like to hear some a little bit stiffer information as far as how the students are doing overall. I get parents, approaching me all the time, and obviously I send them to you guys. Tell them to call the principal and of the building where their children are being educated, and so forth. But there comes a time when we like some of that information as well, as far
Absolutely.
as overall percentage. Because obviously the bottom line is, our students being ready for what's to come next in their lives, whether they're seniors or kindergarten students, the step after step is critical. And I know the challenges, I'm having challenges in my own business, so I understand the challenges, but unfortunately, performance is basically what everyone looks at. I've got situations where I don't have materials for a job. And, someone mentioned, I think that was Tom a little while ago, mentioned about talking to your customers. You're telling your customers you have to wait 6 or 7 weeks for particular items. That doesn't mean you wait, it means you keep looking until you can find those,
Mm-hmm.
So basically that's where I am. Knowing how our students are doing, I'm going to ask Mr. Cornwell the same question as far as, the bottom line And, if you can't give us a report tonight, when will we have something substantial?
Well, so I think the biggest indicator is going to be when we do that second round of benchmark assessing, right? Because then we'll be able to actually track growth from the beginning of the year to the mid-year. And that would be right around that January period. We do have, grades from report cards and those pieces, but that can be subjective sometimes. And what the proof in the pudding is really in those benchmark pieces. Are we seeing the growth? And that's where I think I'll be able to give you some hard data that you're looking for. In the meantime, I will say that, one of the things that we did is we had a slow start because of this. Kids were struggling to work, to figure out how to do the online learning. And so one thing we did do this time, which we have not done in the past during report cards, is to allow an opportunity for students to kind of get caught up. We did some incompletes for those report cards, and then gave a 2-week window for students to kind of go back to those first couple of weeks of instruction, go through those pieces again, and do some review, meet with teachers like Mrs. Drilling, work through those things to kind of help them put some of those essential pieces back into place. And that information, we closed that window down last week, Friday. And so teachers are going back into those report cards to kind of look at, okay, what material did we get? Where are students at? And so as I'm going through that process, I will have a better picture for you, and we'll be able to present some of that information to you, I would say, at the next board meeting here in December.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Mr. Brooks, I just want to add to that. A couple of weeks ago, I did make a request of the superintendent to have some data about the overall academic progress of the students since August. So I don't know if that's going to be presented in December. I did give him until January to get that, because it's going to be pretty in-depth information that we're going to be needing. So that information is forthcoming.
Very good.
Any other questions before we move on to Mr. Cornwell? Okay, Mr. Cornwell, I think you're up.
All right, well, thank you, and good evening, everybody. I hope everybody's doing well tonight. Mr. Brooks, I'm going to touch on a few of those things that you had questions about as I go through some things tonight. First, though, Ms. Williams, last month you talked about Kira Davis from the Forestry Service. We've been in contact with her again, and we're hoping to meet next week to talk about that grant that they have available to get some of our kids working on planting some trees and clearing some trails through the National Forest. The topic that Mr. Mangum brought up in his presentation with his engagement team, that really is the biggest challenge I think we have this year, is connecting kids to our teachers for that face-to-face instruction. I think what we've seen at the secondary level is kids who are connected are doing really remarkably well. We're working now to find those kids who aren't connected so that we can get them more in class. We followed a similar process at the secondary level that they did at the elementary. I actually kind of modeled what we did on their team's efforts. And what we found was, when I showed the data to our teachers and asked them what they were seeing, we found that the teachers were spending so much of their non-instruction time during the day contacting students who weren't in class. So if you have 3 classes that you're contacting kids for, and everybody else is contacting those kids, we're getting a lot of redundancies built into the day, and a lot of parent phone calls, and a lot of parents sick of us calling them. So what we did after we looked at that data is we actually narrowed it down, and now teachers are just contacting their second hour on Mondays and Thursdays, and Tuesdays and Fridays, they're contacting their 5th hour students. It's freed up much more of their time in the afternoon to do some of those interventions that the elementary has been working on. I'm going to show you a little bit of information. I'm going to try to share my screen for you, if it's going to let me, and show you a little bit of how we do some of our information at the secondary. All right, so you should be seeing my screen here. This first slide, this is what our attendance looks like at the secondary level. And it's very similar to what the elementary does. On the left-hand column, I had to cut it off so that we didn't have student names on display here. We have our students listed and then their attendance for the day. And each of those cells is a drop-down menu with face-to-face attendance, phone calls with either teacher or support staff, text messaging with teachers, emailing with teachers. They can submit work, or you can see a couple cases on there where they have case managers. What we then did is, you can just see it over here a little bit. We have a few students here that are highlighted a different color blue. Those are students who actually have received MiFi devices from us. It's a little deceiving as you go through this because it plays to our connectivity issue. Like this student at the very bottom down here, who hasn't been in class Monday or Tuesday, even though he has a MiFi. He's a student that goes back and forth between two parents. And this week he's at a parent's house in Irons where even with the MiFi, he's got just no service. So that's a struggle that we've come to sort of try to find a way to deal with. As far as connecting our kids, right now we have about 60 secondary students who have MiFi devices. We started giving those out on the 19th of October. And I've got this is the two-way, twice a week, two-way percentages. Counting the number of opportunities students have to sit in front of a teacher for instruction. The week of the 12th, that's the week Mr. Heitmeyer mentioned earlier, we came off of testing where our attendance numbers were a little lower. But you can see as MiFi devices started getting out in kids' hands, our attendance numbers for those face-to-face sessions continue to improve. And what's really shocking to me, and I was really surprised and impressed with this, the kids who have the MiFi devices are showing up to class at a higher rate than their peers are. I mean, last week, 61% of our MiFi 61% of classes were attended by MiFi students. So we're seeing those kids come to their classes for that instruction from the teacher. As far as grades, Mr. Brooks, one of the things that I'm hoping to have for you probably in December, we also included an extension on first marking period grades for all students, no matter their grade in the first marking period. If they had an A and they wanted to improve it, great. If they had a D and they wanted to improve it, or an F, we took assignments from anybody. Those came in on Friday, and the teachers are working through those this week to get those assignments scored and in, and Mr. Nason will have those ready for us by Monday morning. We're hoping to include an updated report card on Monday when we send our progress reports. Lastly, as far as parent-teacher conferences went, we had about a 50% attendance rate. At the secondary level, we met with our students in their advisory classes. Most of those were either phone calls or Google Meet sessions like this, but we had about 50% of students represented individually. A lot of those, though, we had siblings who had conferences with several teachers because mom and dad have kids in different advisory classes, so they got to see more than one teacher that evening. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have for me.
Mr. Cornwell,
Yes.
do we have the outreach engagement team at the high school level?
We are doing a similar thing. Mr. Fricky and I, along with Miss Lewis and Miss Lane, have got a similar system going.
Okay.
We've been tracking in the conference room. We have all of our students broken down by grade level, and then we looked at those for their attendance in the month of October is where we started,
Okay.
and that's how we narrowed down our list for who got priority for us on those MiFi devices. So
Okay.
those kids who were having attendance issues, we really narrowed down and went to them. Actually, first we went to those kids that had families with multiple students so we could get more bang for our buck on a single device. And now we've gone to those kids who are having some connectivity issues.
Okay, so as far as their grades and so forth, what are we doing to help them to bring their grades up?
So the first thing we did, like I said a few minutes ago, our teachers are spending less time now in the afternoons making phone calls to kids who weren't in attendance.
Okay,
So they're now able to do a little more individual work, one-on-one and small group work. We have a couple of opportunities for students to have some tutoring. We've had some kids into the building working with teachers and with Mr. Fricky. He's hosted a couple of sessions to help kids out. Right now, we're hoping that just some more freedom in the afternoon for teachers to be working with kids is going to help us get some information to those kids.
okay. Thank you.
Mr. Cornwell,
Yes.
how are we utilizing parapros? Or should I be asking both the elementary and the secondary principals? Are we utilizing our parapros at all? I mean, are they pulling students out and
Yes.
working with them?
Yep. So my parapros, what I've done is I've assigned each of my parapros to a grade level, and they are coordinating small group and individual student sessions with those teachers. And so those teachers have small groups that they've arranged to work with those students and at those grade levels. So for example, my third grade parapro does small group pull out work every day with students. And the same thing across many of my grade levels. So what I did this year, instead of putting letting them work with specific teachers, I had them work with specific grade levels so that they could coordinate those efforts. I've actually posted for 2 more part-time parapros because we're finding when we have that individual time, we're getting a lot more bang for our buck, so to speak, with students, because in that online environment, the smaller the group, the greater the learning seems to be the formula there. And so we've gotten 1 applicant so far with that, and we're hoping to get a few more and start interviewing for those 2 positions.
Okay.
And
Thank you.
it's similar at the secondary level. The pairs are assigned to the middle school grades 6, 7, and 8. They're sitting in on classes and pulling small groups out for some individualized instruction, or even if it's just help reading through assignments.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Thank you for that. And we'll be looking forward to that data information on next month's meeting from both building principals. So thank you. This is where we have our first communication item or communication from the audience. So if you have something, you may type it into the chat box.
Mr. Miller, are you still with us?
I see he's muted.
Mr. Cornwell, do you have the video up again tonight?
I don't, but I will try to get it and let you know.
We do have one more communication after or in between discussion and action.
I'm looking at the YouTube. I do not see any questions.
Okay. Well, we will move on to discussion items, but just so that the audience would know, there is one more in between discussion and action if you did not get a chance to get one in now. So we'll move on to discussion items, and so I'll let you take it from here, Mr. Heitmeyer.
All right. Thank you very much. So discussion items for this evening. Neola 35 1-second reading, just a refresh. We have about 6 policies to update. The biggest one is the new Title IX policy and the subsequent changes that came to that. Then there is 4362, which involves threatening behavior towards staff members, mostly clarifying and identifying specifics for that process. Then there's 5517, which is elimination of policy 5517.02, which basically has been replaced by the updated Title IX policy. 5610 is an update to the emergency removal policy and very specific to the retainment of records. 5611 is about due process rights. And again, that one really highlights the retention of records. And 7440, facility security, which allows the superintendent to authorize the installation of temporary door locking devices, which, as you know, we have already done. So the athletic director, student advocate position was a rigorous process. We had a committee Zoom interview with 3 candidates, and then we had a follow-up in-person interview with 2 candidates. We interviewed some very, very good candidates. What we found through the process was that the skill set for the athletic director and the student advocate are not necessarily the same skill sets. One really focuses on communication and relationships, and the other focuses on communication and organization. We had one candidate who we believe will relate really well to our students, but this person has no previous educational experience. So we're hoping. I'll talk more about this candidate, but it's not a situation where we can necessarily just hand over the AD position. So that was one candidate. We had one candidate who has extensive athletic director experience, who could take over athletics and move quickly and effectively there, but would be new to an advocate type position, and there'd be a learning curve there. We had another candidate who interviewed very well, actually, for our interventionist position that we had posted. And I called that candidate and talked about that. Not that this candidate didn't do well in the interview that we had, but just a great match for the job description in the other position. And the morning of, our 4th candidate who we were going to interview called and had accepted another position already. So I had hoped to have the ADSA situation all wrapped up by today, so we could make a final recommendation to the board. But as you know, over the weekend, things again raised their craziness, and athletics is now on hold for 3 weeks or so. So we don't necessarily have to move fast. So what I'm going to recommend to the board while we try to finish this up and get a candidate on board is to table this until December. We've got a little bit of time there. Item 3, consent agenda item, that's to hire Mr. Sean Williams as JV basketball coach. He's the only applicant that we had for that, and we'd like to recommend him. Again, we don't know when winter sports are going to re-begin or if they are. So that's where we are there. Now, item number 4, I sent you over the weekend. And since then, in addition to a Troon policy, there is a policy available from Neola, but they're similar enough that I didn't want to cause confusion and say, I know I sent you this, but let's look at this. Basically, this policy is, it comes from Myosha, who put out Executive Rule 5, subsection 8, that requires an employer to create a policy prohibiting in-person work for employees to the extent that their work activities can feasibly be completed remotely. So they provided us with the template, and we worked through that and shared that with the board. It's not something that I ever thought would necessarily be something that I'd be part of creating. So those are discussion items. If the board would like to discuss those or ask any questions, not a ton of business, but it's unique business compared to what we're used to doing on a monthly basis.
Questions regarding the Neola? I think tabling the athletic student advocate position is a wise thing to do tonight. And then any other questions about the Mr. Williams as the JV basketball coach?
Question about the coaches. When we hire the coaches, if the season fails or it's shut down due to COVID, do they get a percentage? Do we pay them anything if they've been in having practices and so forth?
What we did, and David can probably answer this better than I can, but I believe it was a percentage of the season that we did in the spring. I don't believe we paid full salaries for spring sports. I believe there was a percentage that we paid, which we also did with our other Schedule B activities because the whole activity hadn't been concluded. I believe that I can say for sure that boys basketball was supposed to start yesterday.
Okay.
So that hasn't officially started. So I have to believe that if we went through with hiring Mr. Williams, that if the season's canceled, he would not necessarily be paid for that because the season didn't begin. If that's kind of what you're asking there.
Okay.
Mr. Forrester, anything you that? What's that?
I was just going to add, what about practices? I don't know the time that coaches might have put in the first week or two of practices before the official start of season. Is that going to be considered as their time as well? Or is that going to be a discussion we'll need to have?
That'll probably be a discussion that we'll need to have.
Okay. That was a good question, Ms. Martin. Any other questions about the discussion items? Okay, this is our last communication on the agenda. So are there any communications from the audience? Trent, I don't know if you're there.
I got a message from him saying he was back, so I think he's back.
Okay. He said no comments. Okay, thank you, Trent. All right. So we will move on to action items. So one is consider a motion to approve the Neola 35-1 update presented for the first reading in October. Is there a motion?
I motion that, sorry about that, having a problem with my screen here. I motion to approve the Neola 35-1 update presented for, is that first reading?
It was presented for the first reading in October. So
Okay, all right.
this is the second reading in
This
November.
is the second reading. Okay,
Yep.
yep. So move.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. Is there a second on support?
Support.
Mr. Carter? Any questions or comments to the
that's me.
motion? If there be none, all in favor? Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carried. Number 2 is table. Do I need to make a motion to table that? Or just
I do
call
not
it
believe we
table?
can table it. We'll just table it.
Okay. Is there a motion to consider to approve Sean Williams as the junior varsity boys basketball coach?
I make a motion we approve Sean Washington as the JV basketball coach for the 2021 basketball season.
Congratulations, Sean.
Thank you, Mrs. Williams. Actually, Mr. Carter, that's going to be Sean Williams. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Did I say Sean Washington?
You did, sir, but I did it first.
I'm sorry. So you can say Sean
It's okay.
Washington.
I
It's
support
been
that
motioned
motion.
by Mr. Carter for Sean Williams to be the JV boys basketball coach. Is there a second?
I support that motion.
It's supported by Mr. Brooks. Are there any questions or comments to the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, you all. The last one is to accept the auditor's report. What's the name of that company, Mr. Forrester?
Hungerford Nichols.
From Hungerford Nichols, as it was presented tonight.
I move that we accept the auditor's report.
The motion by Mr. Brooks. Are you trying to support that?
Second. Williams.
By Mrs. Williams. Thank you. Is any questions or comments to the motion? Ms. Martin, can we do a roll call vote, please, on the auditor's report?
Sure. Mr. Carter?
Aye.
Mrs. Peace?
Aye.
And aye. Mr. Brooks?
Aye.
Mrs. Williams?
Aye.
And Mrs. Washington?
Aye. Motion carried. Thank you. Superintendent items. Oh, I'm sorry. Nope. We got to take action on truant policy.
Yes.
Okay. So we'll consider a motion to create a policy regarding the Michigan OSHA remote employee work rule.
To consider a motion to, are we accepting the MIOSHA rule number 5, subset 8?
You're approving it.
Approving it, okay. Well, I'll consider a motion to approve MIOSHA rule number 5, subset 8.
I'll second.
It's been motioned by Mrs. Williams and seconded by Mrs. Peaskey. Any questions or comments to the motion? All in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carried. Okay, now superintendent items.
All right. Hopefully you were able to read what I sent you last week. I'm gonna add to that and share a couple other things that developed since last Friday. I know that I spent some time with some of you watching Dr. Dominique Smith at the MASB conference about 2 Fridays ago, and his understanding and way to simplify the idea of equity was phenomenal. And I walked away going, he can help us get to the next level of the process that we've been on with poverty and trauma. And we've looked at equity already, but the way he breaks it down and really simplifies it and talks about some simple things that can probably happen to improve our efforts at equity was incredible. So I tweeted him after the conference, and I said I'd really like to talk to you. And so then he followed me on Twitter, which I felt was an invitation to send him a direct message. So I did that, and I waited a few days, and I didn't hear anything back. So I sent him another direct message, and I just said, hey, is there another way that you wanted me to reach out? And he got back and said, hey, sorry about that. Yeah, I definitely want to talk. So last Friday, we spent about a half hour talking about what he may be able to do to help us out. And I'm working with his folks from Corwin right now to set up some virtual work to start off with the leadership team and some other folks. And then that would lead to probably some work with the whole staff, and then getting him on site to see what we have going on and offering some direct information. He's the next step in what we need to do. I meet with Joe Anderson on Thursday to talk about RAG funds. So we will probably be able to work with him using money from the regional assistant grant. So pretty excited about that. But great conversation, and I gave him our background, gave him our demographics and those types of things, and he said, "Oh, you guys, I'd love to work with you. So let's figure out what we can do." So I have a Thursday morning. I also have a meeting scheduled with his agent from Corwin to work on getting something set up. So he's going to send me some of the books that he's already written, just to start getting a grasp of where he may be able to take us. So more to come on that, but very excited about those possibilities. The second new thing that I would like to share is I've been updating you on what we've been thinking of doing with applying for a 21H grant. 21H again is it's the funding mechanism that you can only apply for if you are a partnership school. So we had done a 21H grant a couple years ago, and by the time we were done with it, one of the big expenditures was purchasing those Chromebooks that we ordered in June that finally came in October, and we're working on getting distributed now. So there were some other things we did. We did some trauma things and a couple other things, but that was the big expenditure. So we worked with Lisa Francisco to put together a proposal, and what we have submitted and actually anticipate receiving is bonuses for all of our employees, retention bonuses. We actually did that in 21H before as well, but gone back and said, we'd like to look at doing this again with a first round in December, and then a second round in June at the end of the year. So basically, if you stay with us up through this point, you get a retention bonus. If you stay the whole year, you get the rest of that retention bonus. So it's a unique opportunity being in the situation we are. And this idea was basically generated in conversation with the people at the partnership office when we talked about the amount of turnover that we had seen previously. Now, since last year, we actually did not turn over very many people, if anybody. We were able to hire positions we hadn't been able to fill. But so that's one part of that. So we're excited to be able to do that because it's going to involve additional money that's outside of the collective bargaining agreement. We will need to do a letter of agreement with both unions. I don't think that they'll have a problem agreeing to receive a retention bonus, but what they have asked us to do at the state level is tie that to an effective or better evaluation for our employees. So we'll be working on that in the next couple of weeks, because we anticipate being able to do the first round yet in December. Another part of what we're working on with the 21H grant is, as you know, we've brought in new English language arts curriculum K-12, and we're going to hopefully create a situation where those teachers can kind of observe each other and coach each other and learn from each other, as we've done some extensive professional development so far, but we're hoping to take that to the next level. And what we hear a lot from teachers is, I'd really like to have the time to see other people do it. At this point, and probably for the rest of this year and maybe next year, I really doubt that we're going to be able to send anybody out to someplace else. So this would be kind of that next level. We're doing it here, so let's watch each other do that. And actually working with Joe Anderson to put that in place. And the final piece of it is bringing in somebody to do kind of take a curriculum leadership. Just because we've put in the new ELA, we've put in the new math, we're going to be looking at social studies and science. So we have all those curricular pieces that we're juggling, but we also have a unique opportunity right now because we have the RAG money and we have the 21H money to be able to do some extra things. We've purchased the curriculum the last couple of years, mostly out of the RAG grant, and we anticipate purchasing social studies and science curriculum through the RAG grant as well. But we need to do some gap analyses and some things like that to make sure that we go after the curriculum that we need to go after. If you remember last year, we looked, I think the elementary looked at about 9 different programs for ELA, and the secondary looked at 3. So, I mean, there's a lot of programs that are available to look at, and we just need that piece to kind of coordinate it and bring people in virtually or in person if possible. And that would kind of take that off of the principal's plates, so they wouldn't have to focus so much on that and be able to focus on working on instruction. So we should know soon if the 21H grant is approved. So more to come on that when we find that out. Legislative state information. As I told you, we continue to keep an eye on the different things that are going on. The big thing we're looking at right now is the whole MIOSHA work from home information and the things that are tied into that, and kind of following everything that was rolled out Sunday night. I didn't know that all that was kind of gonna come crashing down on us on Sunday like that. So we actually spent Monday really trying to disaggregate everything that had been put out on Sunday night. And honestly, I mean, the situation that we're in, where we have been remote, made our interpretation of everything a little easier than some places are going through right now, and looking at a major transition, and then presumably, possibly, if things are allowed to go back, another transition in 3 weeks. I'm thankful for our students and our staff that we are able to keep rolling the way we are, because it's not perfect. I mean, remote learning is not perfect. As we've gone through this, I would also say, real learning, face-to-face learning, is probably not perfect either. So we've been consistent. I think we've gotten better. So I think we're in a good situation, but it doesn't mean that we didn't spend most of Monday trying to really understand and grasp everything that the information contains. So those are the things that are keeping us all up right now at night. Human resources, as I tried to outline, just giving you update on different people who, like I talked about, Mrs. Conklin. She's not a full-time employee because she's a retired educator, so she comes back to us every year, and we pay her through title funds and stuff. I just wanted to give you an update that she had returned to do that, and that we had brought Mrs. Brooks on board. Not as a new special ed teacher or anything like that, but to kind of assist us in special ed at the elementary. We do have a candidate for special ed that we're looking at right now. The elementary team interviewed that individual last week. I'm doing some additional homework right now because the individual hasn't taught in a few years, so I'm trying to put together that whole puzzle piece. But we'll be doing a second interview with her on Thursday, and then I would think that the committee will probably send that candidate to me. So hopefully we're able to fill that hole. But again, I think there's at least, just at a quick look, about 46 school districts that are looking for special ed teachers or multiple special ed teachers. So it's a tough one to find. The other thing that I really want to keep you updated on, using the and Mr. Forrester, if I say any of these grants that we're using incorrectly, correct me. But predominantly using the ESSERS funds, which allows for the procurement of devices for the COVID learning. We're looking at spending about $160,000 to really update all of our classrooms K-12. We're talking about different projectors, smart boards, different screens, iPads, so teachers can walk around the classroom and have their device right there and shoot things to the board. The way that it's been described in kind of examples, it could be very awesome. So we're looking at that. There'll be labor to install all that and everything also, but that could also come out of the ESSERS grant. And then at the same time, we are looking at almost $95,000 to update our district, our staff laptops, keyboards, mice, 2 monitors for each workstation, just to try to eliminate eliminate all of the barriers that we have with teaching and learning. So these techie things really have the potential to allow us to do some great things in the classroom, and not only with teaching, but the more devices, the more things you can expose kids to, the more things they can create. Because let's be honest, the kids probably are better at these devices than most of the adults. So just the more opportunities that we're able to give, the better off they're going to be when they go to their next step, whatever that is. But the thing I wanted to say about that is we're going to work with ETA to make sure everybody gets the professional learning that they need and the additional assistance, so everybody is able to find a comfort level with the new devices. So exciting times, scary times, and crazy times all at once. But that's all I have, and I know I have talked way too much tonight. So if you have any questions, I'll try to answer those.
Any questions? Any board member items?
Just a quick question. Mr. Heitmeyer, what are we doing as far as preparing to bring our students back in January if we should get to that place? Are we preparing our building yet?
Our building is in good shape as far as PPE.
Okay.
We've got all of the cleaning devices and materials available for all the classrooms. We have at least 2 of the Clorox devices. I can't remember the exact name, but they can be put in a room and do some sanitizing with little work. I would say that we're doing pretty good to get ready. You know, we're in constant communication with Chartwells and Yates to make sure that when this finally happens, what's it going to look like? You know, we can we get everybody 6 feet apart in all the classrooms? Maybe. You know, those are some of the things that we're working on. You know, we're trying to cohort as much as possible, especially from 6 to 12. As you know, if you've been in those classrooms in the middle school specifically, thing that we still have to solve. But as far as masks and PPE, signage and all those things, we have all of those. You know, when we figure out what it looks like, we will bring the staff in again and kind of reorient them with what we have in place. We've done that already, but that was when we were anticipating that we may be back in November. So, but as far as being prepared, I think that we are really prepared and ready. And I mean, there's nobody who wants the kids back more than I do.
Right.
But I think what we've watched happen really validates the board's decision to support the school going remote, because the situation, I mean, we've had 9 people who've had to quarantine, as well as some students, and we haven't been open. So if we had been open, it may be more people who had to quarantine and many more students. So I think we've played it very well. I'm proud of the board that they were willing to take a chance on this, because it wasn't the popular decision by any means, but I truly feel that it was the right decision. And as we've watched numbers skyrocket and continue to skyrocket, I'm thankful that we are in the situation that we're in. And I'll be 100% honest. Our conversation, I think Mr. Fournier, Mr. Fricky, Mr. Cornwell, Mr. Mangum, and Mr. Forrest and I got together and spent quite a bit of time on Monday. And I think our conversation was probably quite different than what it was at a lot of places. And that's a testament to you guys saying, yeah, we need to continue with what we're doing because it's the right thing. And I thank you for that. I thank you for that support.
Do we know how costly it would be if we had to get dividers? What are your thoughts on the dividers?
When I have talked to people about dividers, they really say that they are not that effective. And if you have the dividers, it's another thing you have to clean regularly. So my thought on that is that may not be the way to go. But you know, when we look at the information, masks and being masked up are a huge way to stop the spread and make sure that it's not going from you or coming to you. But if we decide that we need to look at something like dividers, we can do that. But the people that I've talked to, and Mr. Forrester may know a little bit more about it than I do. He kind of heads up that department. But I've been kind of encouraged or discouraged from going down that route, because it's the big reason is if you have 24 of those in a classroom, that's 24 more things that have to be cleaned on a regular basis. And they're not that effective from what I've been told. Mr. Forrester, do you know anything different?
No, I mean, I've been in calls with local health officials, and I think that primarily what I've heard is that those things look nice when you go into Meijer or Walmart and you see the plexiglass, but in terms of preventing droplets, in particular when you're in shared spaces like a classroom for an extended period of time, they really are minimally effective. That's what we've been told.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or board member items? Well, I have a few board member items, so I'm going to take my my time if no one else has any comments. So I just had a couple. I actually in my notes, and I'm so glad you talked about the curriculum, because in my notes I wrote curriculum coach or consultant, since we're having a lot of new curriculum, especially the ELA. We know social studies is going to be following. We used to work with a curriculum consultant. Mr. Forster, do you remember what that company was called? It was called Rise something. I always want to call it Sunrise, but it wasn't Sunrise.
School
Did
Rise.
you remember? School Rise. School Rise. We worked with them once before as a consultant, and they did a great job. They would be familiar with us, so that might be a good place to start when we start talking about curriculum consultants, or having someone come in to assist us with evaluation and educating staff on curriculum. A reminder about that data. I don't know. I heard both principals say in December. I don't want to put any added stress or undue work on you. I don't know if you can have that available that soon, because we were looking at some, well, the request should include some NWEA data and maybe some PSAT and SAT, since those things are already in. And then just kind of looking at the, I heard it a couple of times tonight, echoed amongst board members, progress. And I think we're, concerned about what those letter grades look like. But we also know letter grades really don't reflect proficiency or growth. So we'll need to have some of that type of information especially as we're looking at the NWEA, if we're talking about growth, if we're talking about proficiency. So if you can't have that by December, that's okay. But we'll look for that in January. Another thing we were talking about, and I think this came up again with one of the board members, talking about the engagement team. It would be really great to see that at scale, and that's kind of our blueprint language, to really see a district-wide engagement team and having those teams to cross over, because we know like those elementary kids have siblings who are junior high and high school. I think that'd be a great place to start with developing an engagement team district-wide. And then I don't know if, I want to say congratulations if our two newest board member elects are still on, which is Miss Latanya Hill and Mr. P.T. Jones Salam. I think we will be reaching out to these individuals, Mr. Heitmeyer, to schedule them individually to meet with them and do an onboarding along with Mr. Forrester. And I also would encourage, Mr. Brooks, are you still on?
Yes, I am.
Would you like to get you involved in the onboarding of our two newest board member elects when we get ready to schedule those meetings?
Certainly.
If we give you enough notice, would you be available?
Certainly.
Awesome. And then Mr. Heitmeyer did mention that some of us attended the MASB conference, which was virtual, which was a little weird, a little different, not being able to get together, but Dominic was absolutely wonderful. And he does fit in our next piece when we're talking about equity, especially equity within the classroom. And so I'm really looking forward to being able to work with him and having to come and work with our district. So that is all I have for tonight. I just want to, one more again, make sure there are no other board member items before we adjourn this evening.
Yes, I would like to say a little something, Madam President. And I don't know if you were referring to my comments. I don't remember asking anything about grades, because I know at this time that really isn't the measure of student progress. These two gentlemen are, they're next to our teachers, are first responders. And I think they can comment on what's going on with our students, whether it's on an individual basis or as a whole. Being ready for the world is more important than grades. Obviously, schools look at your grades. There are other venues that they also look at, but being able to cope in today's global society, there's a lot that we have taken for granted. That's the social aspect, and many other things. So those are my comments. The bottom line to me means how are our students doing? And it doesn't necessarily mean grades. This is a totally different situation. And, I mean, anyone, I guess, that if they put their mind to it can do the work and pass the grades, but how are they doing overall as human beings? So, because they are, I mean, I know some of them have a hard time communicating what's really going on, not just at home, but just, missing their friends. And so that's basically what I'm looking at, or looking for.
That's really good. I know Mr. Cornwell, and I think Mr. Heitmeyer and Mr. Mangum had this conversation, and Mr. Forster had this conversation about, the non-academic needs of our students, and, just helping those kids, because we all, Mr. Forster, myself, Mr. Cornwell, we were talking about our kids and just how they're missing their friends. And you're right, there's more to it than the academic part. And so we always include that non-academic piece, and I'm pretty sure they'll include that in their report as well. It's a non-academic piece of how we're helping them and the resources that we provide, or the resources we let those families know are available to help support them with that piece. So thank you, Mr. Brooks, for bringing that up and separating that and pointing that out, because that is so true. Anything else for the common good of the meeting before we adjourn? Okay, sounds like everyone's feeling okay about tonight. So we can make a motion to adjourn the meeting at 7:59.
So move.
All right. Can I get all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody? All right. So meeting is adjourned now it's 8 p.m. At 8 p.m. All right. Thank you, everyone.
All right.